Whenever I am about to make a big change to my life or come into something new that I've been wanting for a while, my brain tries to subtly self-sabotage. And a lot of times I'll gaslight myself out of making the change because I think regardless of how much emotionally I want to make a change, my brain is scared of what will happen. It's almost easier to want to make the change than to actually make it, because when we want to make the change, we get to build up like this perfect version of ourselves in our heads. And when we actually make the change, then we have to face judgment and imperfection and potentially negativity. And that, I think, is the scary part to my brain. When I was first considering my gender identity, I often found myself gaslighting myself or just not listening to the feelings that I had. A lot of times my brain would go and say, no, you're not actually queer. You're just a feminine man and you want to be different, or you want to be unique, or you've lived for 26, 27 years as a man. Like, how do you know these feelings are real? Like, are these just temporary? And those feelings can be very hard to overcome, because you can't like get validation for those feelings from other people. You just have to kind of figure out on your own what's actually true and what's just self-sabotage. Now, do I know how to stop self-sabotaging myself? Absolutely not. If I did, I would not be making this video. I have learned some ways to figure out which of those thoughts are like my own brain telling me how I feel, and which thoughts are brain being afraid and like overcompensating and gaslighting myself. So when I'm self-sabotaging, the first thing that I always do is affirm what I know to be true. Gaslighting is hearing the truth, but then convincing ourselves that it's not the truth. So if you can kind of find like a grounding point of truth, that can help you break those cycles of gaslighting. When I was gaslighting myself about my gender identity, the thought I would always come back to is, that's not a cis thought, or that's not a cisgender feeling. And this to me was very affirming, because it took like what I knew to be true about gender and cisgender people and showed me that the thoughts and feelings I had were valid. So for example, if I picked out a piece of clothing, a lot of times I would think, I wish I could wear this in the way a woman does, or I wish I could wear this and it would fit my body like someone who was born with a more femme body. And instead of gaslighting myself to think you just want to be different, I would remind myself like cis people do not have those thoughts. When the thought popped into my head that was like, I'm okay being misgendered. I'm okay if like people don't think I'm a man or question my gender or sexuality because I go out and I paint my nails or I have longer hair. The thought that like I'm okay with that and actually secretly kind of desired it. Again, like my thought was, a man would not want to be misgendered. A man would not be secretly wishing that people like didn't call them he, him. Just put two and two together of like the facts I knew to be true with the thoughts I had, and didn't give me any room to gaslight myself about it. If you have a job, it's likely that you felt some sort of imposter syndrome at some point in your life. Either you didn't feel like you were meeting the expectations for your role, or you felt like other people at the company are farther ahead than you are, that you don't belong. This is another great example where telling yourself the truth can help you break that cycle of gaslighting, because the truth is you were hired for the skills that you do have, not the skills of your coworkers, not the skills you think you should have. So if you were hired for what you can do, that means doing your best is enough and is what you're expected to be doing at your job. So reminding myself of the facts is my favorite way to break that cycle of gaslighting, but I understand that's not for everybody. So if it doesn't work for you, there is something else you can try, and it's called just doing it anyway. This is actually one of the best options for making a big change in your life. The more you can trust that no one cares when you make a big change to your life or something that feels big to you, the easier it gets to keep making those decisions. I go to a lot of punk and like DIY shows, and I've always wanted to dress a little bit more alternative, but I was always afraid what people would think. I was working a corporate job, so I told myself I couldn't, but I really wanted to. So I started buying like some jewelry and just wearing it. Nobody said anything. People just do not care about you in the way that you think they do. It is very hard to believe that until you've actually tested it out. So just like make the change and then see what happens. If you want to change your style, if you want to start posting content online, if you want to change or come out about your gender identity or your sexuality, just like do it within reason, as long as you're safe, of course. And you'll realize that very few people actually care. It's not easy, but if you can make the change, realize that nobody really cares, it'll make it easier to make the change the next time. And the next time gets even easier, and it just keeps going from there. The important thing to keep in mind, if you decide not to make the decision, if you decide not to come out, not to change up your style, not to be open and honest about your identity, is that you are giving someone else power over your own authenticity, over your own self-expression. It might be the validation of strangers on the internet. It might be the validation of family or friends, but whoever comes to mind when you think about making that change, whoever you're afraid of, you are giving them power over your sense of self-expression. It can be helpful when you're gaslighting yourself out of a change or taking the step that you know you need to take to ask yourself, who is it that's stopping you? Whose judgment or rejection do you fear? Whenever I've wanted to make a change in my life, whenever I've started to gaslight myself, whether I've told myself that I wasn't doing a good enough job at work, or that I actually wasn't queer, that I downplayed my own identity, or whether it was wanting to make a change to my style and feeling all of this baggage carried into that decision, I've always taken these steps. I've always started by reminding myself of the facts, the things I know to be true. I have identified exactly what fear of judgment or rejection is holding me back, and then I've made the change anyway. And most of the time, no one cares. But even when people have cared, I have never regretted making the decision that is in alignment with my true self. So please stop gaslighting yourself. Make the change, say the thing, come out, be who you are. As long as you can do it safely, you're not going to regret it no matter what happens. I still gaslight myself all the time about my appearance, about my art, about my work, but I don't care. I'm just doing it anyway.